I think it's almost a 7. Maybe we can get started. I'll do a quick introduction. My name is Tejinder Singh. I'm one of the board members for Friends of Ottawa National Wildlife Refuge. Friends Group supports the only national wildlife refuge in Ohio. Our mission is to support the refuge in land acquisition, conservation projects, and also recently, raising funds for not only acquiring new properties around Lake Erie, one of the most critical wetlands around Lake Erie, but also for youth development. We have 4 interns at this time who are residents in our refuge, and they support the refuge as part of their internship also. And as we go along, Bill, I know you've just joined. We'll paste a couple of links towards the end. And today's presenter is Dr. Thomas deHaas. He has joined us from Ohio State University. He'll be speaking about evergreen trees, and I'm looking forward to that presentation myself. So I think without much ado, Dr. deHaas, turning it over to you. I know you're already sharing your screen. Maybe if you could give a quick introduction and then.
Sure. Did you need to hit record or no?
No, I started recording, so we are recording.
All right.
And then.
All right. So TJ, thank you for the very kind introduction. I am so excited that I just got my doctorate degree. I'm actually I do not have a doctorate degree, so Tom deHaas, I am the Agriculture Natural Resource Educator for the Ohio State University in Erie County. And really my specialty or my background is more ornamental trees, shrubs, and turf. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. I do think that your mission for the wildlife refuge is very important. We talk a lot about wetlands, and we talk about wetlands as this: they are the kidneys of the environment. So they actually filter a lot of the sediment, a lot of the contaminants. They filter that out before it hits Lake Erie. So we're excited that you guys are trying to preserve that as well. So without further ado, I do work in Sandusky, Ohio. Erie County is just one over from Ottawa County, but we live in Ottawa County. So I live on the Marblehead Peninsula. But so Evergreens with ND. So where did I come up with this idea? Well, I actually was the educator in Northeast Ohio. So in Lake County, Ohio, which is east of Cleveland. And we had a ton of evergreens out there. And many of the evergreens you're going to see were native kind of over to that side of the state. One of the problems that we run into with evergreens, actually, and there's 2 problems because TJ kind of referred to that, is that evergreens typically do not like wet feet, and they typically don't like high pH. And so Marblehead, for example, is right on top of limestone because we have a quarry probably a mile away from our house. And so because of that lime tends to have a high pH. And if we think about lime versus acid, so lime helps to raise the pH. A lot of our evergreens don't like high pH. Some are okay with it, but most of them want a lower pH. Okay, so let's go ahead and start. Yeah. And so really when we talk about evergreens, we're talking about 2 sorts of evergreens. So we have conifers, which are cone bearing, gymnosperms, and then our other evergreens are broadleaf evergreens, which are angiosperms, but not everything is a pine tree. So I'll get a picture and they'll say, my pine tree is sick. Well, number 1, it's not a pine tree. And number 2, it's not sick. That's what, it's supposed to look like that. So again, not everything is a pine tree. When we think about evergreen conifers, okay, so cone bearing plants, I've grouped those in a couple different categories. So we have fir, and then I have fir plus Douglas fir. Actually, fir, the Latin genus on fir is Abies. The Latin genus on Douglas fir is Pseudotsuga. So they're different groups. They've taken Douglas fir and they've kind of separated it out and made it its own species of fir. Pine is another group. Spruce is another. Hemlock, Juniper, and Arborvitae. So we'll talk about all those different plants, and I'll give you an example of each one. Okay? When we talk about fir species, we talk about basically, and these are all in the true fir species. So we have white fir, which is concolor fir, which is the one that you're seeing on your screen there. We have canine fir, A lot of times if you buy a Christmas tree in Ohio, you're probably, if you're buying a fir, you're probably buying Canaan fir. Canaans are actually native to West Virginia, the Canaan Valley, and they are in the balsam family, but they are actually considered a separate species of balsam. It's called a Canaan fir, and they will grow in Ohio. Nico fir, which is basically an Oriental fir, and then Douglas fir, which is not a true fir. So this is actually a Canaan fir, and this is actually a Christmas tree farm, actually down by Belleville. This is a Clear View Christmas tree farm, but Canaan fir, very, very nice fir, soft texture, very nice branching habit, very conical shaped. And so that's one, again, prefers a pH of probably 5.5 to 6.5. I will say this, before you plant, my encouragement to you is go ahead and get a soil test. We offer soil tests in Sandusky and Erie County. They're $10 a test. We send our tests away to Penn State. They will do the soil test. They will send you back a result of your soil test, and they send us a copy of that. So if you have any questions, you can contact the extension office and we can talk about that. Canaan fir is a fir that, and most firs will like a pH of 5.5 to 6.5. All right. Our next fir is Douglas fir, and this is actually it has been in the past a popular Christmas tree. It does have some problems. I would not plant a Douglas fir in your yard, and the reason why is because it will get a fungus called Swiss needle cast. I think I have a picture of that. We'll talk about Douglas fir. So this is actually a Douglas fir in a Christmas tree lot that was for sale. But here is the problem: Swiss needle cast will actually cause the needles to turn brown. So these are all these brown ones here are Douglas fir. This is a Canaan fir right here, but it does attack Douglas fir. So I would encourage you probably to steer away from Douglas fir. And that's what the needle cast looks like. So these are actually, the spores are right here on the needle. And so I would stay away from Douglas fir, although it is a nice plant. Concolor fir is kind of the exception to the rule as far as firs are concerned. Concolor can actually grow in a higher pH, up to even a pH of 8. So of all the fir species that you might want to consider, I would consider thinking about concolor fir for Northwest Ohio. So I would say that, and that would be my suggestion to think about that. So concolor fir or white fir.
White,
right?
okay.
This is a concolor fir that's actually growing probably less than a mile from my house. Again, I told you the pH here is very, very high, but doing pretty well. Nice conical shape. White fir, a good choice for, maybe kind of if you're looking for that larger evergreen concolor might be the one to think about. All right. So there are the problem with, in general, our species of firs in Ohio is we are getting warmer, and we are getting warmer and wetter. So we're looking at some other firs, and these are ones that I'm just going to send them out to you as options, but they're probably not very available. So this is Nordman fir. Will grow in a little higher pH, but also will tolerate a little bit hotter climate. Okay. This is Trojan fir. Okay. This is Turkish fir. Again, another fir so these are not native firs. Turkish fir is from the Black Sea area. But again, one that will tolerate that kind of a drier areas, more of an arid location. Hardiness zone of 5 to 7. We're in about 6 in Ohio.
6 in
so
Ohio.
Nordman is another one. Conifers to consider. We think about the basically our number of days over 90. So this is actually number of days over 90 from 2041 to 2070 if we continue to stay with the same track of global warming. And then these are the emissions. So frost-free seasons is going to get longer. Again, we're looking at conifers that might possibly tolerate some of those higher emission conditions. Again, Nordman is another one, or sometimes called Caucasian fir. That's Nordman. Okay, this is actually Trojan fir. These are actually, I talked about Nico fir. This is actually in the Trojan fir group. Nice plant. Okay. And then Trojan will leaf out early, but gets tip burn. So sometimes we'll get kind of like a lot of your fruit trees, they will flower early and we might get a late frost and then it burns the flowers off that. Same thing can happen with Trojan fir. All right. And then this is Greek fir, another option, and Nico fir, Homolopsis. All right. So let's move to a next group, our spruce group. We have Colorado blue spruce, we have Norway spruce, white spruce, Alberta, and weeping Norway spruce. The only one that's really native to our area is white spruce. It's this one right here. Okay. So Colorado spruce, obviously the name indicates it came from Colorado. Colorado blue spruce, we do have Colorado spruce that are actually green in color. Colorado blue spruce is the one that people like because of the blue-green color. Norway spruce is from Norway. Alberta spruce was actually a sport, and we'll talk about that. And then weeping Norway spruce, we'll talk about that. So this is Colorado blue spruce. Some people love this plant. There is a problem with Colorado blue spruce. As it grows up and it gets to be this big, sometimes, and you can see it right here, the bottom branches will begin to die. It does get a disease called rhizosphere. And so I would probably stay away from blue spruce, even though it is a nice blue-green color. I think that if you look at white fir, that's probably a better choice than blue spruce. Let's keep going here. So, but again, beautiful blue-green color. As a Christmas tree, these tend to have very, very sharp needles. And so therefore they can be kind of prickly when you're trying to decorate them. Norway spruce, not native to Ohio, but does very, very well here. So this is the Norway spruce. This is actually one in my backyard, but beautiful tree, up-arching branches, does like moist, well-drained soil. This is down in down by Mansfield at a ski resort down there. Okay, there's some more. So white spruce is related to Norway spruce in nature, but it's actually native to the United States. So this is Alberta spruce, and you may have these, or you may have neighbors that have these, kind of a real tight growth habit. So Alberta spruce is Picea glauca conica. Actually, this is a sport that was actually taken off a plant that had kind of a real clumpy growth. We call that a sport, and it was propagated or basically grafted so that all the Alberta spruce are white spruce that have been grafted on, and they're the same sport. And so that is an example of a landscape plant. But again, Alberta spruce is related to white spruce because that's what it grows on, that's what they grafted on. And then we have weeping Norway spruce. Again, Norway spruce, somebody found a kind of a weeping habit, grafted plant. Very nice, really makes a nice kind of a accent to a Japanese garden or something like that, but a weeping texture. All right. And this is a weeping blue spruce. So this is actually, it kind of looks like kind of going sideways, going up and going back down again, weeping blue spruce. This is a globe blue spruce. Okay. And again, this is a sport that will stay very, very, very compact. Won't grow into a triangular shape. It'll be kind of round, and they call it globe blue spruce. All right. And this is bird's nest spruce, another spruce that is related to Norway spruce, but kind of a low grower, kind of a shrubby kind of plant. All right.
Yeah.
So our next group is pines. Okay. And we have a whole bunch of different pines. White pine is actually native to Ohio, native to the eastern United States. So you might have heard eastern white pine. We'll look at a picture of that. Austrian pine was imported from Austria. It did really well maybe 30 years ago, but it's kind of lost its favor for a lot of landscapers because it has some problems. Swiss stone pine is another one that kind of replaced Austrian pine, but again from Switzerland. We have Scotch pine or Scots pine, which is from Scotland, weeping white pine, bugle pine, Tanioso pine, and Japanese blue pine, which is actually, or blue Japanese pine, which is actually from Japan. All right. So white pine, native to the United States, native to Ohio, a very, very nice tree, can get really, really big. So this is actually the ski slope in Mansfield, snow trails. Again, gets pretty big. This is actually a tree that is growing next door to us. But again, a tree that'll get up to 20 or 30 feet tall. So you don't want to plant it right next to your house.
Okay.
All right. A very soft texture, very kind of a feathery texture. It's a 5-needle pine. This is Swiss stone pine, very cone shape, kind of grows really tight. This tree is probably 30 years old. So they're very slow growing. Scotch pine is another pine. Again, comes out of Scotland, but the problem with this is it does get a disease called lophodermia. And so I would not encourage you to, put this in your landscape, but it was planted quite a bit. There are a lot of Scotch pine around, but again, not one of my favorite choices. This is a weeping white pine. If you have a place where it's kind of a unique or a very a tight, compact area, Japanese garden again, that kind of a thing where you want a weeping texture. Weeping white pine is a beautiful accent plant, kind of weeps over and a very, very nice texture to it. This is mugo pine. A lot of times you'll see them very, very small in the landscape, kind of a clumpy growth, very, very small, squatty. So mugo pine. And this is another example of mugo pine, kind of that tight, really tight, compact growth habit, kind of nice at in a landscape where it's kind of a border planting or kind of a foundation planting. And then and it's hard to see this, but this is actually Taniosho pine. You can kind of see the stem right here. This is actually a high graft. It was grafted up here and it was grafted on a regular rootstock, but Taniosho pine, they can be a 4-foot graft, a 2-foot graft, kind of a nice, again, very a specimen plant. You can kind of put it, sometimes people will put it on 2 sides of the driveway or going into their house as kind of accents on both sides. But again, a nice plant that you can add. And then blue Japanese white pine. This is actually Pinus parviflora glauca. And so it is from Japan. But again, a slow grower. This plant is probably 20 years old. A nice blue-green texture. Very, very kind of a clumpy kind of growth, but a very nice plant. All right. We move into our hemlocks, and there are places where hemlocks do actually grow in Northwest Ohio, but they really do like an acid pH. And I mean, there's some, and if you've ever been in anywhere in Ohio where there are hemlock stands, so a couple of ones that come to mind, Mohican State Park has a very beautiful stand of hemlocks. Hocking Hills has a very beautiful stand of hemlocks. And then if you go up to Northeast Ohio, Grand River Valley, along where a lot of the wineries are, there are beautiful hemlock stands down there. But again, Canadian hemlock really likes a higher pH, probably not one that grows necessarily well here. This is growing at a cemetery in Sandusky, doing pretty well. But these are actually hemlocks that I have planted in my yard in Lake County, Ohio. The one reason why these were doing so well, they were on the north-facing side of the house. They were in the shade most of the day, so they really do like that kind of a very shaded location. They do well, but they do like an acid pH shaded location. Okay, and this is what the Canadian hemlock looks like. It is a beautiful tree, very common down in North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, as you kind of come up through the Allegheny Mountains. That's another picture of the texture, very soft texture, very soft. These are the pine cones the hemlock cones on the Canadian hemlock. This is actually Carolina hemlock. It is not actually one that's native to our area, more from the Carolinas, but again, another hemlock, a beautiful hemlock, very, very much slower growing than our Canadian hemlock. And then this is a weeping hemlock. Again, kind of a very, very specialized location, Japanese garden, kind of where you want a specimen plant. It is a Canadian hemlock that does weep. So a beautiful plant, nice addition to your landscape. All right. Next is Arborvitae. These have become very, very common in Northwest Ohio. Green Giant is a common one. Emerald Arborvitae is another very common one. And then Forever Goldie is actually one that has a gold leaf to it. So this is actually Green Giant Arborvitae. You see these in the garden centers. They make a very nice screen. So TJ was talking about that he was looking at kind of putting up a screen. As long as it's moist and well drained, Arborvitae might be a really, really good one. You plant them 4 or 5 feet apart from each other, and in 10 years, you'll have a wall of green. They make a beautiful addition to your landscape. And they do have that very, very feathery looking texture to it. Okay. The next one is actually, so this is actually a Emerald Arborvitae right here. And this is actually a Green Giant. Emerald tends to be very, very tight and slow growing. Green Giant is tall, and you can see the texture of the foliage is very, very coarse. Okay. So this is actually a very tall, probably 40 years old Emerald Arborvitae. And these are Emerald Arborvitaes are probably 7 or 8 years old. But again, if you think about that, these are probably planted 3 or 4 feet apart. Eventually, this is going to grow into a wall of green, makes a very, very nice screen. But again, moist, well drained. You don't want to plant them. Arborvitaes, as most evergreens, hate wet feet. All right. And again, you have that giant Arborvitae next to an emerald green Arborvitae. You kind of see that difference. This is Forever Goldie, and it has this kind of a gold tip to it. It is a Arborvitae thuioccidentalis, but Forever Goldie, it has that kind of a gold color to it. And there's a good picture. So the spring foliage will leaf out kind of that real gold look to it, and then it'll kind of fade to more of a light green in the summer. All right.
Nice.
So our next group is false cypress. Okay. And actually so cypress is the ones that will actually grow in standing water. And we do have 2 deciduous narrowleaf trees. One is false cypress. I'm sorry, what is bald cypress, which will grow by water. And the other one is dawn redwood, but that likes moist and well drained. So false cypress are related to the cypress that you would think down in the cypress swamps in the south, but they like moist, well drained. So we have gold thread false cypress, Nucus or Nucatensis false cypress or Nootka, and then Hinoki false cypress and golden mop false cypress. We'll look at those 4. Okay. And you've probably seen these in the landscape. This is gold thread false cypress, slow growing, kind of that real fairy, airy, feathery texture to it. A very nice landscape plant. And that's that kind of a texture. It's yellow. It stays yellow all summer long. Very nice in the foundation planting as a landscape plant. So this one is called, this is actually this is Chamaecyparis lawsoniana nucatensis. Okay, so this is actually Nukes false cypress. Some people love this plant. It does kind of look weepy. So I look at this plant and sometimes I think that evergreen needs a drink. It needs some water. So you have to like that kind of a look. But Nucatensis false cypress, very nice plant. Kind of that very, weeping look to it. Makes a nice landscape plant. Again, this is probably 20, 25 years old. Not real fast growing. Okay. This is Hinoki false cypress. This plant is probably 30 years old. This plant may be 50 years old. Very slow growing, very compact foliage. Doesn't grow very much every year. So it is a very nice specimen plant. If you think about a Japanese garden or some side of a rock garden, very nice accent to that. All right. And this is that kind of real dense contorted foliage. And then we have golden mop false cypress. You see these in landscape again, stays gold all summer long. Nice in a landscape as a landscape plant, but golden mop false cypress. All right. So we move into our junipers. Junipers are actually, some are native to the United States, some are not. Okay. So we'll kind of go through these. Junipers are juniperous. They're in the juniper family. Okay. So the first one here is Eastern red cedar. Of all the evergreens that grow in Northwest Ohio, this is the most common one. In fact, if a farmer doesn't plow his fields for a couple years, you'll see these things sprout up.
Hmm.
And this is eastern red cedar, native to the United States, native to Ohio. Juniperus virginiana, very nice plant. But again, it's kind of the reason why they call it red cedar is because it does turn that kind of a burgundy or almost a burnt red color in the fall, and some people don't like that. But eastern red cedar is native, it's common, nice plant to consider. There are some weeping forms of juniper. This is blue rug juniper. Again, this is kind of growing on the ground. As it gets bigger, it'll get kind of a hump in the middle where the crown of the plant is, and it'll kind of spread out, but creeps along the ground, blue rug juniper. Another one is skyrocket juniper, kind of looks very, very conical. A lot of times people will put these in the entranceway of their house because it'll grow 1 foot wide and 10 feet tall. So skyrocket juniper is a common one. Okay. This is Het's Chinese juniper. Again, that kind of a blue-green color. A nice plant, not native to the United States, but does really well in our landscapes. Does need to be pruned a lot. But again, Het's blue juniper. And that's what the foliage looks like. It's kind of that blue-green color. Gold tip juniper. Kind of like our Chamaecyparis or our false cypress. This leaves out kind of golden tipped, and then it will fade to green as the foliage gets a little older. So again, another possible choice for your landscape. And that's what it looks like in the summer. And you can see a little bit of gold left, but mostly green. Okay, let's keep going here. So this is shore juniper, and this was growing in a raised planter in Port Clinton, Ohio. But, you know, a nice soft texture. Does make a nice foundation planting in a landscape. So shore juniper is another one to consider. And it's got that kind of a very, very, I guess I would say almost a bottle brush, what you would clean a test tube with. It's kind of a bottle brush look, but a nice texture to it. Does well, tolerates a lot of different conditions. Sometimes hard to get started, but once it gets growing, it really, if it likes the area, it'll take off for you. All right. And this is tam juniper, Juniperus tamaricifolia. Again, kind of like weeping juniper or creeping juniper, kind of crawls along the ground, but a kind of a more of a blue-green color. And next to that, this is bird's nest spruce right here. We talked about that earlier. All right. And that's kind of that, so this is actually called Calgary carga, but similar to tam juniper, got that blue-green color, kind of very, very slow growing. So let's move into most plants that you're not going to plant here except for one of them, actually two of them. Rhododendrons and azaleas. Sorry?
If you don't mind, I had one question,
Yeah, go ahead. Yes.
All of the cypress had falls in front of them. Is there a reason? I mean,
excellent question. Okay, false cypress. The genus on those are Chamaecyparis. Okay. And the genus on cypress is Taxodium. Okay. So they're a totally different group of plants. They were at one point in time in the past, they were probably in the same genus. And, some of our botanists probably said they're not really in the same, they shouldn't be in the same genus, so they're separated. Kind of like what we said, this excellent question. We said the same thing with, I talked about firs and Douglas fir. Our firs are all in the Abies family or Abies genus, and Douglas fir is Pseudotsuga menziesii. So kind of different grouping of plants. Okay. Broadleaf evergreens, the two that will grow in our area, hollies and boxwood. Magnolias will as well, but the rest of them, you're just going to make them angry. So I'm going to show you what they are. I'm going to tell you what they are, but unless you're in Northeast Ohio, you probably shouldn't plant them. The first one is rhododendron. Beautiful plant, does grow pretty well. This is actually doing pretty well, and this is in Lakeside Marblehead, but it's growing on the northern exposure. It's in the shade all the time. It's in a raised bed, and they probably treat this with ammonium sulfate or something to keep the pH down. But again, rhododendron is a beautiful flower. You might remember rhododendrons, or if you've ever been down to West Virginia or the Carolinas in the springtime, these are an understory plant, beautiful plant in the woods, probably not a good choice for in Northeast Ohio or Northwest Ohio. Another one is azalea, and a lot of times people will buy azaleas. We'll get, we'll do these for Mother's Day sometimes or whatever, or Easter. Most of the azaleas do not like a pH of higher than about 6. Again, our pH is in the 7s, probably not a good choice for here. Now, hollies, on the other hand, and this is actually Japanese holly. Hollies, you need to have a male and a female in either in order to get fruit. So you need to have a male and a female. And so comically enough, what the nurseries do is you will buy holly, Ilex meservi, blue girl, and that will be the one that will have basically the berries on it. But in order for blue girl to have berries, you need to get blue boy planted next to it, and then they will get berries in it. This is the foliage. Again, holly does pretty well in Northwest Ohio. Protected location. If it's in the middle of a sunny area, it'll get kind of that burnt foliage, but it'll green up pretty well in the springtime. So holly would be another choice that you could put in Northwest Ohio. Magnolias. We have magnolias. This is actually one that's semi-evergreen, sweet bay magnolia. But again, magnolias, this is semi-evergreen because this is on the northern exposure of a building, and this is in Sandusky. But sweet bay magnolia, it's later blooming than the other magnolias. Has a white bloom on it that actually smells like gardenias. Very, very nice plant. But again, one that I would recommend. We have other magnolias. A lot of them bloom in the springtime. We have saucer and star magnolia. A lot of times they get a late frost and will burn the flowers off. Mountain laurel, not even really native to Ohio. It's more of a Pennsylvania plant, but does pretty well in Pennsylvania. When you move it to Ohio, it doesn't do too well here. So mountain laurel is another evergreen you might be familiar with, but not recommended for Ohio. Now, boxwood, on the other hand, do really well in Ohio. Almost all of Ohio, boxwood. The one thing I will caution you is boxwood does. There is a box tree moth that is in Michigan, and so just be aware that there may be an invasive pest that may be coming to attack your boxwood. But this is actually big leaf boxwood. Has bigger leaves to it. And this is a little leaf boxwood. So they're very similar. Evergreen all year long, pretty maintenance free, responds to pruning, a pretty easy and nice plant to maintain in your landscape. All right. And with that, I will say, how did we do on time there? Are we okay there, TJ?
Yeah, we're quite ahead, Yeah, I think we did good. Yeah.
Okay. So I will say that if you have any questions, this is my email address.
Yeah.
This is my direct phone number. If you call my phone number and I don't answer, it automatically goes to voicemail, and it will leave me an email that says, hey, you got a phone call. So I am totally open to phone calls, anything with ornamental trees, shrubs, turf, landscape questions. Feel free to call me.
Perfect.
If you have any soybean questions or corn questions, you can call me, but I'll probably refer you to one of my colleagues that deal with that kind of stuff. So, Bill was pleasant enough to sit here and listen. Bill, I don't know if you had any questions for me in particular, or any questions about specific plants that I talked about. You can unmute yourself if you wish.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm
Any
good.
questions?
No, it's a good presentation. It's pretty informative, and but I have no specific questions at this time.
Okay. Bill, where are you located?
I'm in Toledo.
Okay, all right. So just be aware that, again, right over the Michigan border, actually Lawrence County, which is to your northern border. You just want to make sure you kind of keep track. If you know anybody that has boxwoods, box tree moth is probably headed your way, unfortunately. But
okay.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Good info.
TJ, I appreciate you,
Yeah.
hosting this. And
no, thank you so much, Dr. DeHaas. Yeah, I know. I had one question, See,
Right.
I want not instant result, but fairly quick result. So which would be the right tree? Like don't want to wait 10 years. Is there something that grow tall sooner?
Yeah, so I would say, and you're talking about more of your screen that you want.
Yeah, we have a walkway path right in behind our house, the one
So
house.
again, if you go back and watch the recording, but Arborvitae, the green giant is going to tend to get a lot bigger and grow a lot faster. So if you put those on 5-foot centers. In probably 4 or 5 years, they're going to all grow together, and it's going to look like a wall.
Oh,
If you want something that's a little slower growing, you would get emerald arborvitae, and those will grow slower. But again, it's more of a compact grower. Doesn't really require pruning. So either one of those arborvitaes would be a good screen for you to start with. Okay.
perfect.
Can I interject something here?
Sure, Bill. Go ahead.
This is Bill. Yeah, at my son's house, along his fence line, along a street, probably about 50 or 60-foot span.
Mhm.
5, 6, 7 years ago, maybe we planted Spring Grove arborvitae there.
Okay.
And we planted them 40 feet apart, or not 40, 4 feet apart.
Okay.
And now they're probably a good 12-foot tall,
Mm.
and just beautiful growing together, and no browning or anything, and they're doing really well.
So Spring Grove is actually a variety of giant arborvitae. That's actually a cultivar, but yeah, a good choice. Yeah, thanks for interjecting. But arborvitaes really do a pretty good job. A lot of people that, will say like they're overplanted, but they're a pretty tolerant plant as long as you put them in a moist, well-drained area. They do not like wet feet. Most of our evergreens in general hate wet feet, but then so do we, right? So,
Yeah, true.
you know, so when you're out in the middle of the marsh and you're walking around, you better not have tennis shoes. You better have hip waders on. So, but yeah, evergreens don't like wet feet. So just keep that in mind. Okay.
Perfect. Yes. Yeah.
Any other questions, TJ?
No, this is great. Thank you so much. Friends group definitely appreciates, you spending the time with us. Yeah.
You're welcome. And again, any questions that people have, if you watch the recording and you have a question afterwards, feel free to contact me, email or phone call. I'm open to either one. Okay.
Perfect. Yep. And I may send you a picture or so, once I plant something, just to get your
You
input
are
or before I
welcome to
do.
do that.
All right.
Sure. I can put it in my PowerPoint. So,
All right. Thank you, sir.
all right. All right.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
You too as well. Take care. All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, sir. Yeah.